Hello and welcome to RSG Gaming's Top 10 Games of the Year 2015. This doesn't really require any more of an explanation than that, so let's just get on with it. I'm just going to point out though, if I sound weird during any of the segments, I have had an ongoing cold for like 4 weeks now, throughout almost the entire production of this video. Kind of shit. But anyway, number 10. Want to visit new worlds, defend your home, and bring democracy to the other civilizations of the galaxy, whether they want it or not? Then Helldivers is the extremely cynical but pretty fun game of choice for you and your friends.
Spread managed democracy throughout the galaxy. Become more than you are. Become a hero.
In a plot and satirical theme similar to Starship Troopers, Helldivers is a cooperative multiplayer or single-player isometric twin-stick shooter where you play the role of one of Super Earth's elite Helldivers, tasked with defending humanity from its enemies from across the galaxy, in an incredibly jingoistic ultra-nationalistic fashion, with only a hint of cynicism.
Freedom, justice, and prosperity have been achieved.
Helldivers features a continuous multiplayer theatre of war, where missions conducted by all players across each of its 3 fronts contributes to the overall war effort, with Super Earth seeking to liberate the homeworlds of the 3 alien factions, the Bugs, the Illuminate, and the Cyborgs. Diving onto the enemy planets, your squad will seek to complete a number of objectives, choosing a drop zone, calling in aid in the form of stratagems, such as turrets, ammo resupplies, or airstrikes, and, well, shoot lots and in all directions against waves of enemy forces before eventually being extracted. Limited customization is featured, always a good thing, but the gameplay, particularly cooperatively in a decent team, is what makes this game. I did have an issue with the lack of explanation of some objectives though. For example, retrieve these explosives. Okay, well, I'm in the area marked on the map, but there's nothing here. There's nothing here! What am I looking for? Oh great, they found me and they're swarming the site. Turns out, what I was supposed to do, without any hint by the way, was to call in a specific supply drop for a metal detector, retrieve this, and then use it to find the explosives. Right, got it. Now, how the fuck does this work? So another 5 minutes later of trying to figure out how to use it, while still being shot at by wave after wave of enemies, walking around this patch of desert, trying to find the specific patch of dirt down to the pixel where the objective is. Finally! Now that's 1 of 3 done. And out of ammo. This is just an example from my experience, but honestly, other than that, it's a pretty damn entertaining game. Definitely recommend you try this with friends. A decent squad can accomplish even the most challenging missions, and result in an insane amount of shit on screen at any given time. Because Batman and kicking ass. And Batman. And a little Catwoman. The 3rd part. 4th part? Just ignoring Origins. In the Batman Arkham trilogy, I don't know. Arkham Knight. Arkham Asylum and City were both awesome games. I mean, really. Even as a not particularly massive Batman fan, they were just objectively fan-fucking-tastic games. The gameplay was extraordinary, with fluid, fast-paced combat, not relying on combo mastery like traditional fighting games, and really made for incredibly satisfying combat. Meanwhile, for the most part, it actually had a good story, really diving into the relationship between Batman and his arch-nemesis the Joker across each of these games, even if that isn't always the focus, bringing in other characters and villains from across the franchise. Probably a good way of describing this would be as a video game adaptation of the fantastic Batman animated series. Really, I can't give those games high enough praise. So, Arkham Knight? All I can really say is, it's more of the same. That sounds bad, doesn't it? Well, it's more of a good thing. Following the spoiler-free events of the previous game, Batman emerges into Gotham City with a new villainous power vacuum, making arguably the ongoing series' 2nd villain, Scarecrow, attempt to take over the city, issuing a threat to unleash his fear toxin across Gotham, while at the same time appears to have allied with an unknown mercenary figure, Cross Batman cosplayer, who seems to have some personal beef with the Dark Knight. There are some change-ups to this game, including most notably the Batmobile, which is cool, but I always preferred the grapple hook and gliding style of travel personally. The world map being the whole city of Gotham this time around would be awesome too, except it's an abandoned city of Gotham, inhabited only by criminals and thugs. So exactly like the last game, just bigger. But anyway, it's really good. I just don't have much more to say about it. During our end of year video 2014, I cited this as one of my most anticipated games of the coming year. But time has probably hampered my excitement for what is still undoubtedly an awesome game from an awesome franchise. Lego Jurassic World. What? I love Lego. And I love Jurassic Park. Fuck you! Lego Jurassic World takes on the Jurassic Park franchise of movies in Lego's comedic and creative way.
You didn't say the magic word. Play!
As they have done previously with Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, Star Wars again, Indiana Jones, Star Wars again, Schindler's List. Okay, so it's a huge money-making scheme riding on the backs of successful franchises of the moment, but given the theme of this particular title, I had to go for it. Jurassic Park. And even if this is a rinse and repeat thing, I still haven't played a Lego game since the Star Wars ones on PS2. Playing through the 3 Jurassic Park films and the new Jurassic World one, this has the same Lego gameplay with basic puzzle solving and utilising different skills from different characters, as well as a degree of exploration on the larger world maps, as seen in most of the other Lego games. And speaking of world maps, I'm going to talk about this first. They're awesome. As a huge Jurassic Park fan, by the way, watch my earlier video looking on the larger series of Jurassic Park games, I adored being able to explore the original park, taking vehicles of choice around familiar structures and locations, the same being done for Isla Sorna, the setting for the second and third movies, and the new fully functional Jurassic World theme park, complete with gyroscope rides, aquarium, and other attractions that double as side missions for collectibles. All I can say is that, for a fan, it's a very endearing game, with several layers of collectibles, including characters, constructible Lego skeletons, unlockable vehicles, and dinosaur species, which can also be customised or hybridised and used in missions themselves or around the islands. The cynical part of me is against the Legoization of every film franchise, but I do think some are worthwhile, and I think Jurassic Park has managed to be one too. That said, I could tell it was struggling with variety with the characters. I mean, sure, you've got the main characters from each film, Dr. Alan Grant, Ian Malcolm, John Hammond, etc., and a few of the dinosaurs. But other than that, the Costa Rican boat guy from the second movie, the rich British assholes and their kid, some guy called Barry, kinda scraping the barrel here. To be honest, for what it is, a Lego game mainly for kids, I think it's great. I only have one criticism, and I know this goes for all of these games, but it's still pretty glaring. The gameplay. At its core, it's just too simple. It's too shallow. It's a game where you can't possibly lose. I know it isn't a game played for the challenge, but I really clocked onto just how bad this is during the Raptors in the kitchen scene. Probably, out of every scene from the first movie, this is one of the most memorable and lends itself best to some thrilling, tight, heart-racing stealth gameplay. But, and I tried, it is impossible to even be found by the Raptors. You just can't possibly lose. I know they weren't trying to make Alien Isolation here, but it just could have been done awesomely. Like I said though, it's a Lego game, and for what it is, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Elder Scrolls Tamriel Unlimited. This way it counts as a 2015 release, because this was the version which finally came out on consoles as promised just this year. And it's taken me about a year to finally get into it. But now that I have, yeah, I kinda like it. Alright, so Elder Scrolls games. Big fantasy world, open to explore, rich character customization, class development, side quests, exploration, groups and factions, mediocre main quest to thread it all together, and celebrity voice actor as the old man telling you what to do.
Hurry! We must go now!
this is the essence of what an Elder Scrolls game is, then technically, Tamriel Unlimited, fuck it, I'm just going to call it EZO, ticks all the boxes. Yet, it still doesn't quite feel like an Elder Scrolls game. I think when it comes down to it, MMOs fucking suck. Alright, maybe not that, but they only work a very narrow band of games. They can be applied to almost anything, but not necessarily with effect. Just let me ask you this, when you were fighting Alduin in Skyrim, knowing that you were the Dragonborn, destined to save the world from destruction, was the thought running through your mind, damn, I wish 3 or 4 other Dragonborns would jump in to kill the World Eater for me, even though I'm clearly handling it myself? And then after that, return back down that lonely mountain pass, with 14 or 15 other mountain climbers on the way up to fight their own Alduins? It's like doing the Walker's Path up Ben Nevis. Kinda takes the thrill out of the accomplishment of reaching the summit when there are about 500 other tourists a day doing the same thing. This is my biggest problem with MMOs. I mean, I've played hundreds of hours of Star Wars The Old Republic, that being the only other game of its type I've really invested any time into. But at no point playing that, ever, would it have been missed if every other player outside my group suddenly died. I mean, maybe this is all just an immersion thing, but whatever. That's my MMO rant over. As a game overall though, EZO does have a lot going for it. While its graphics are certainly not up to the realism standard of a single-player Elder Scrolls or Bethesda game, they are beautiful and vibrant in a more simplistic way. The world, or worlds I guess, since this doesn't employ one overworld like the single-player titles do, are large, and there are a good few of them, even if they don't actually constitute the entire continent as promised. I would have liked to visit an updated Vanderfell Island for Morrowind, or the rest of Skyrim aside from the 2 available regions. Character customization, a staple of these games, is good, though still seems to lock players out of certain races depending on their faction. But the one thing that really sticks in my mind that I like about this game is the armour and weapon variety, crafting and customization. I'm still experimenting at the moment, but I love the idea of there being 9 different styles of armour for each race, with Nordic style iron armour looking drastically different from High Elven. Taking the concept of the Civil War from Skyrim into a multiplayer setting, EZO features a war between the 3 alliances made up from the warring Tamriel races. As mentioned, depending on your race, you would generally be within one of these alliances, or choose your own allegiance if you're able to, and will fight in large PvP campaigns within the central province of Cyrodiil, the setting of the game Oblivion, over the Imperial City. However, along with that is the PvE main story, involving you following a blind Dumbledore to help defeat another Satan Daedra dude with the help of Femship, hard to organise other players, and purchasable currency from the Crown Store. Whatever, I'm playing it currently on and off, and my cynical attitude towards a lot of the stuff aside, I am liking it. The combat is understandably simplistic and ability based like most MMOs, rather than what Skyrim players might be used to. But other than that, it does have a bit of an Elder Scrolls-y feel to it, I guess. With these beautiful environments, creatures, story, music, whatever. I think you'll know yourself whether this is something you'd be into or not, but for me, sure, I'm glad I gave it a go.
For over a decade, Battlefront was the guardian of fun and replayability in the old gaming community. Before the dark times. Before Electronic Arts.
Star Wars Battlefront, or to give it its full title, Star Wars Battlefront EA. So, wait, do I like this game or not then? Yes, there is a lot to dislike here, and we will get round to some of my major gripes in a minute, but I have to admit, I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. Playing in battles of the Galactic Civil War between the Rebel Alliance and the surprisingly progressive all-of-a-sudden Galactic Empire, this puts you into the role of the soldiers on the ground. But following Battlefront tradition, has threefold combat with infantry, vehicles, and hero characters. As a synopsis, that's all there really is to it, because of course, there is no meaningful single-player campaign. But again, let's put that into the gripe box for a minute. First things first, this game looks amazing. But of course, nobody could have expected differently from the Frostbite engine. Gameplay itself is, well, hit and miss. As a long-time Battlefield player who has become increasingly frustrated and distanced from the series with the more recent titles, I appreciated the relatively level playing field. The pickup system for vehicles and heroes is questionable, but everyone has a good chance of getting these, without needing to wait on the spawn screens trying to grab a tank the millisecond one appears before anyone else can, and then being immediately blown up by a stealth anti-tank missile from another server somewhere. However, on that topic, the vehicles in this game are, well, another thing for the great box. Character customization. I'm honestly a little surprised existed at all. So yeah, even though it's not very good, I got to applaud it for existing at all. Applaud concluded. But it could have been so much better, with changes to armor pieces, helmet designs, or colouring. But alright, the minefield of gripes are becoming a bit too much. Need to get some of these out of the way now.
I have a really bad feeling about this.
Single player is a joke. The co-op missions are, well, welcome I guess, but all I really wanted was the same single player Battlefront experience as before, with dozens of bots on the multiplayer map, with all vehicles and heroes available. Instead, we get very small arena-style death matches against groups of AI, where you need to collect dropped points. Really? Was it so hard for you to, do it right? The lack of single player means that, unfortunately, when this game's online base dries up, then there's nothing. Aerial vehicles are actually kind of fun, though lack of space battles is still a what the fuck. One game mode allows only aerial battles, and this is actually one of my favourite modes, just because it appeals to me. And because I can kick ass. Hee hee haw. And again, going back to graphics and audio, flying through a cloud of a destroyed enemy and hearing the sound of debris against your cockpit glasses. Ugh. But this is probably even more of a time waster than the other modes. Though, bots? You managed bots here. The shit. But on the ground, vehicles are so limited. ATSTs, on-rail ATATs, and speeder bikes which are less than useless.
Do not let the rebels gain the upper hand.
Where's the rebels' answer to the ATST? Where are some variety in tanks? I know these things weren't in the movies, but for fuck's sake, have a little creativity. And weapon selection? This is pretty poor. But if we're going to talk about weapons, what the shit is this pistol? The pistol made instantly available to whoever the fuck bought the deluxe edition is as powerful as the slow-firing anti-tank blaster, but has no such speed disadvantage. In other words, here's the gun which can kill in one headshot, or 2 to 3 body shots. It's fucking broken! I wondered why the hell everyone seemed to be running around with pistols, and why every time I died it seemed to be one of these cunts. So, Battlefront. Why the fuck is it on this list then if there's so much wrong? I mean, I haven't even got into all these other things, lack of clone wars, limited maps, balancing issues with heroes. I mean, this is meant to be a competitive multiplayer game. It's not fair that as a normal player, I have basically just got to accept my death the moment I see a hero walk on screen. Nope, there's absolutely nothing I can do to stop myself dying in this situation. Congratulations, you wanker. This didn't bother me in a single player setting like Battlefront, where it became a fun challenge, with the knowledge that controlling General Grievous isn't some cunt racking up a kill streak at your expense just because he picked up a fucking token. But even in Battlefront 2, heroes could actually be defeated one-on-one if you played it right. While here, unless they're already injured to about 10% health, you cannot beat them without the backup of 6 or 7 other people, most of whom will die in the process. But as I was saying, why is this on the list at all then? True, it's not Battlefront. Hell, it's not even Star Wars reskinned Battlefield, which has much more content and variety in pretty much everything. But what little there is fun. It's enjoyable. It does have that very Star Wars feel, I found. If this wasn't a AAA title, it'd be a great little Star Wars shooter. If this wasn't the successor to a fantastic, already established and still superior series, it would be a fun time waster. It's a hugely flawed game, and if they pump out a sequel in 12 months' time, I doubt I will be getting it. But for now, I am having fun with it, playing with friends or on my own or whatever, and don't want to see the multiplayer dry up, leaving it unplayable. My recommendation isn't to buy it at whole price. I needed to see what it was like for myself and, well, this video, but I was under no illusion to what I was getting myself into, and that was a decision I made. But when this comes down in price and you're interested, sure, give it a go. At its core, the only real problem with this is that in its present state, there isn't a whole lot of game to warrant full game price. And more egregiously, it should have been so much more. But at least we got DLC to come, woo! So, here's a game I really knew little about going in, but had heard good enough things about it that I did the normally unheard of thing for me, and went into a new series without playing the originals. Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. The Witcher Wild 3 Hunt. Based on a book series by Polish writer Andrzej Sapkowski. By a Polish writer, this is the third part of a fantasy trilogy drawing on a rich backstory and Eastern European lore, almost all of which went over my head because I'm sitting here trying to figure out who these factions are and what the hell's going on. Yes, I really could have done with playing the previous games, and if I get the chance I probably will, but still, I'm enjoying this nonetheless. You play as the Witcher Geralt, a monster hunter for hire who's tracking Ciri, a girl with incredible power who seems to be on the run from the Wild Hunt. Scary sky pirate Sauron cosplayers? I don't. This game hath boobies. Completing this game has been pretty low on my priorities list at the moment, with my gameplay time very limited in the latter half of this year. But what little I have played, I've really actually liked, even if I'm having to pay triple attention to try and figure out what's going on. I did watch a few backstory videos and read all the character codex entries provided in-game, which has helped a little. As Geralt, you can employ a variety of attacks, using your two blades of silver and steel, one for monsters and one for people, a handy crossbow, and your... thumbs. And the use of these and the combat in general is very tactical. This is not an easy game. I decided to play it on hard for proper experience, and this has probably been the main reason for my slow progress in the story. It's goddamn tricky. Picking a fight with a mob of bandits has to be considered more carefully than just run in like a one-man army. This is like the Game of Thrones of action RPGs. Oh hey Charles Dance. And any fuck up can easily be fatal. Suitably, when it comes to monster hunting, this encourages planning and even research of the creature in question, each of which having specific weaknesses and traits which can be exploited before the fight itself. It's a lot of detail which helps with the immersion into this role, and the world in general, and it makes fights much more satisfying when you can walk away from them. Like, yeah, this is a dangerous damn profession I've got here. Why couldn't I have just been a plumber? In the run up to this list, I made sure to go back and play more of this game, but part of its higher placement on this list is because I know I would love this game if I already knew the series and if I had more time to play through it. As it stands, I do really like it. It might have even been higher if I was already a fan of this series, but either way, if you're into a good, challenging and big fantasy RPG, give it a try. Do you like hurting other people? What? You're not a fucking mentalist? Well fuck you, because Hotline Miami is fucking awesome. By Denaton Games, Hotline Miami 2, wrong number, is the second part in the retro top-down beat 'em, shoot 'em, dissect 'em, pulverize 'em up Hotline Miami franchise. Acting not so much as a sequel, but a much larger game taking place chronologically before, during, after, and generally around the events of the first game. Hotline 1 was an extremely popular indie game featuring the main player character, Jacket, being coerced by anonymous phone calls to go commit gruesome vigilante-style raids and murders against Russian mobsters rooted in an alternate late 80s Miami, and an unknown network of other people in the same situation, all performing these attacks while wearing an array of creepy animal masks, and as the game went on, went into Jacket's spiral into the surreal and the insane. For a pretty basic game, it had an interesting premise, leaving a lot of unanswered questions and employing the unreliable narrator trope for the story, with the world being seen through the eyes of a madman, leaving it impossible to know what's real and what are total imaginations. Wrong Number is bigger in story, showing the aftermath of Jacket's now infamous masked maniac killings, and providing new viewpoints and story arcs from a number of characters in a time-jumping story in this alternate Cold War history, where the Soviets invaded Hawaii, but a fragile state of peace is currently in effect. In Miami, the Russian mob is reeling from its crippling losses by Jacket, while a group called The Fans emulate Jacket's animal-masked vigilante-style killings. A sensationalist movie is in the works, based, with incredible inaccuracy, on the events of the first game, all while a writer is seeking to find if there's any truth behind these so-called phone calls and their connection to the killings. There's the son of the Russian mob boss, Jacket's old squad in Hawaii. To be honest, there's almost too much story, and so much seemingly unconnected stuff going on, with one mission to the next almost never being chronological. But, in an insane kind of way, it all makes sense, with clues and obscure details, how one mission might connect to another, in this game or the last. I mean, this whole game is just a big trip. The already solid gameplay is slightly better than before, cripplingly difficult throughout, but that only makes it consistently satisfying every time you do clear a mission. Walking back through the cleared hallways admiring your horrific handiwork to creepy music. Speaking of which, the music, one of the highlights of the first game, is again as good or better here. In a game with no voice dialogue, minimal sound effects, and a lot of restarting of missions, a good soundtrack is an absolute requirement, and serves both to pump you up for running into a hallway full of machete-wielding Colombian gangsters, and to give it that retro 80s electronic and synth vibe. It's a hugely entertaining game, and works well as a time waster or a full-on power playthrough. I'd already recommend it just for the gameplay, music and art style, but for how they chose to stage the narrative, made it into something much more interesting. Yes, it can be confusing, and I was totally lost in the middle of the story, but I would absolutely not be surprised if this was the intention. Each story arc appears isolated, with that character having a tunnel vision perspective with regards to the whole story. But when you finally figure out all the pieces of the puzzle, there's almost a newfound respect for the whole thing. So, amazing soundtrack, fun bullshittery, and mental story. Hotline Miami 2 in a nutshell. Life is strange. Yes, it is, especially when you have magic time powers. This episodic 5-part game was released throughout the year from January to October by Don't Nod Entertainment and Square Enix. Taking place over a week in a small town, it centres around a photography student at Blackwell Academy, Max, who seemingly out of nowhere starts having vivid visions of the town's destruction and discovers she has the ability to reverse time.
Whoa. What the fuck?
This is a very story-driven game, practically an interactive TV series, even being framed in a way similar to many modern TV dramas, even including their own episode recaps at the start of each part.
Previously on Life is Strange.
Being so story-heavy, I'm kinda limited on what I can say about this without giving anything away. It's a game where actions have consequences, where small decisions have unknown and unpredictable impacts later, of course in relation to the so-called butterfly effect. Every action you take is recorded in your account so that from episode to episode your choices are carried over. This is a concept I've seen in many of my favourite games, so it's always welcome. But I've got to say that some of these choices were far from easy, and more than once I was sitting there staring at the screen for 5 minutes or so, trying to process everything that had happened and everything that could happen depending on what I did. Meanwhile trying to balance the ethical with the pragmatic or the emotional. I'll just say, if you enjoy being hit with the feels in your games, then this is probably one for you. On the time manipulation aspect, having the ability to turn back the clock allows Max to change an action, see what the alternative would be, or, if clever, use information or evidence learned later to help you in conversations sooner. Whether it's trying to get information out of someone, or just try to make yourself look better in class.
Can you please tell us the name of the process that gave birth to the first self-portraits?
The Daguerrean process, invented by a French painter named Louis Daguerre around 1830.
And like anyone would do with such a power, you can always fuck with people and reverse to avoid any consequences. What I think I really appreciate about this game is that while these time controls could lazily be applied to any action game, this follows a totally normal girl with a relatively normal life. But I'll say now, this does not make for a boring game. While episode 1 was largely introductory and had fun with Max finding ways to use her new abilities, for me, it wasn't until its final scene that I got a sense of where things were going. And it didn't look good. It deals heavily in very serious real-world issues, especially with regards to young adults and teenagers, cyberbullying, suicide, drugs and sexual assault, as well as surveillance and even euthanasia. And by episode 2, I was heavily invested. With all the episodes now out, you could buy the season pass or each episode individually for a pretty small price each. Really a good game, and glad a friend convinced me to play what would otherwise probably pass by me without notice this year. Certainly one of the most interesting and entertaining games of 2015. Well, what can I say? This was one of my most anticipated games for the year. The first 2015 release I got back in February has been both the source of hours of fun and thus far most viewed and enjoyed playthrough on this channel. Of course, it's Dragon Ball Xenoverse. I've never been much into fighting games, nor for that matter DBZ games, this being only my second one, but this was a major exception to that, and after a lot of hype, met every expectation I had. Probably the biggest selling point and source for excitement here was a customizable main character in a new storyline. So, after some asshole has been corrupting events in history, changing the outcomes of defining moments in battles in Dragon Ball series, Trunks, or specifically future Trunks, from the other timeline, just watch the show, is tasked by the Supreme Kai of Time to play damage control on all of these historical anomalies. And so he uses the Dragon Balls to kidnap a fighter from another universe to play damage control on all of these historical anomalies. Good work, Trunks, you son of a bitch. As your custom fighter, you jump through time to intervene at points in history which are being changed while trying to stop those responsible, and looking badass as fuck in the process. I really appreciated the fact that an original-ish story was created for this game. I mean, yeah, new story is kind of generous. It still hits all the same bases. Saiyan Saga, Ginyu Force, Frieza, Cell, Majin Buu, but the fact that it's a story about you, rather than go take all the credit coup, as an outsider looking into this already well-established storyline, and of course it does break off to follow the new plot as well. But fuck, when was Dragon Ball ever a coherent or well-written story? We're here to see the action. As someone not hugely into traditional fighting games, this thankfully does have many RPG elements, with side missions, XP, and unlockable or purchasable new moves and loot. But even so, the fighting itself is still great. Button mashing alone won't get you very far here, when you need to manage both your stamina and ki to avoid leaving yourself vulnerable. There is a bit of tact involved, as well as just using your hard punches, but it is possible to plan and pull a victory out of even the worst fights, which can give you some very satisfying wins. Most of the time. There are a few enemies, or versions of enemies, which bullshittingly don't take damage the same way as other characters, and some missions which are just fucking ridiculous. Just take any fight where you're outnumbered against Super Saiyans, who will spam ultimates like nothing else. But for the occasional situations like this, thankfully, and in classic DBZ fashion, your own character's power can be increased to insane levels, with point distribution for health, energy, or basic punch attacks. If you want to feel really overpowered, put all your skill points into basic attacks and strikes. Makes your punches like goddamn freight trains. It was great to see so many of the original characters playable. No love for King Cold though? No? He wanted nothing but peas. But with 8 slots for custom characters, just creating new builds using the different races, all of which have their own advantage and disadvantages, is tons of fun. But yes, I love this game. Been playing it all year, and likely to keep playing it just for how much fun I have. One of, if not the most anticipated game of 2015, the latest installment in one of my favourite series of all time. You can make your character morbidly obese and a robot butler actually calls him by name. Yes, of course, it's Fallout 4. I am fucking loving this game. As good as 2015 has been for games, there weren't too many on this list that I could actually sit and play for hours on end. Fallout 4 is one of those games though. Having been introduced to this franchise in 2008 with Fallout 3, buying up New Vegas on the day of its release, and having since played the original 2 multiple times now, I really love Fallout. That of course meant that number 4 had some high standards to live up to. But with a developer like Bethesda, a lore and world so fun and rich, and with great space for creativity, I had plenty of confidence in this game. You play as the sole survivor of Vault 111, the Vault-Tec vault built before the Series' nuclear war of 2077, in which you and your family would retreat to just in time on the day the bombs fall. Playing and actually seeing the pre-war world is new territory for Fallout, discounting simulations like Tranquility Lane or Operation Anchorage, which is nice to see, and perhaps makes it a little bit more impactful when your character wakes up from cryogenic sleep into the blasted wasteland of former Boston over 200 years later.
Behold, I am immortal.
Bringing him in line with current Fallout chronology about 10 years after the events of Fallout 3 in Washington, D.C. From here, you embark on a quest to find your son, who was kidnapped from you while you were all frozen in the vault, meeting new and old factions and shaping the future of the Commonwealth. Let's get the negative points out of the way first, because there are some. Well, first things first, and this really doesn't bother me, but it requires mentioning: glitches.
Got a doll baby, I love her so. Nothing else like her anywhere you go. A man, she's anything but calm. A regular pint-sized atom bomb. Atom bomb, baby, little atom bomb. I want her in my wigwam. She's just the way I want her to be. A million times hotter than TNT.
Yeah, they exist. But I'm willing to forgive given the scale of these games, and have the stance that unless it's stopping you from progressing in any way, then it's pretty harmless. And ragdolls catapulting into the air is all just part of the unintentional fun. Now, this might be me getting spoilt by these games, but I wasn't overly impressed by the size of the map. Though they do get in reasonable variety, from coastal to urban, forested, swampy, and blasted radiated wasteland. Commendable given this is entirely set in and around the city of Boston. The story is, I think, solid for a Fallout game, and sticks with the presumably intentional Fallout tradition of leaving your vault, or tribe, or Doc Mitchell's house, to find something lost. Whether it's a water purification chip, Garden of Eden creation kit, your father, the platinum chip, or, this time, your son. But also in Fallout tradition, without giving anything away, upon completing what you think is the main quest of this game, things change up in some way. That said, I don't think this is the strongest story a Fallout game has produced. It definitely has some of the strongest moments. The opening, for example, was breathtaking, and the entire story of trying to find the people who took your son, and why, is probably the heaviest. But how the game handles everything after that is a bit muddled. Multiple endings are always a thing in Fallout games, but I would say New Vegas did it much clearer and just better than here. I mean, I'm only going by my own experience here, but I was offered to join the Institute, the mysterious boogeymen of the game who everyone in the Commonwealth seems to be afraid of, but little is known about. I told them that I would think about it, and generally they seemed cool with me. Then my fortress was attacked by an army of synthetics. Now, this is particularly insulting if you know the story, but let's just say I felt more than a little bit betrayed and happy to nuke those motherfuckers to hell. Gameplay is solid. Really, the first or third person combat was never really a high point of 3 or New Vegas, but they really tightened the screws and made something as good or better than most other first person shooters. Weapon customization as well is extensive, allowing you to upgrade your weapon of choice with your gameplay style. Regular armor customization is present too, but disappointingly only applies to specific types, with the separate chest plates, leg and arm guards which can be mixed and matched on top of only certain clothes which allow it. But then there is the power armor crafting, which has also been heavily promoted. This comes with negatives and positives. Overall, I love the idea. While they've scrapped, for the better in my opinion, weapon and armor maintenance, you instead have a highly upgradable set of power armor. This requires fuel cells and regular maintenance on its parts, but this is worth it considering how much of a beating you can take safe inside your supersuit. However, if you're conscious of the fact that its power will be constantly draining with use, it'll be very off-putting to take it out often. Furthermore, I do find it a bit irritating when I would take out any of my T45, T60 or T51 sets, and within the first few moments of combat, lose both of my leg plates to missiles. Better than having my actual legs blown off, I suppose, but come on. Okay, what else to talk about in this behemoth of a game? Right. Settlement building is another new feature, allowing pretty free reign to build structures, walls, defences, power, water, food, and expand to other settlements across the map. While this first attempt at this, discounting the much more limited Skyrim house building, could be a bit more polished, I really like the concept. It feels like I'm setting the foundations for a nation-state, in the same way that Shady Sands in Fallout 1 went on to become the capital of the new California Republic. But with this in mind, I wish I could have had more control over the faction, like ideology, militia style, flags, even settlement or faction titles. Yes, this is mainly because I just wanted to create the new Enclave, or the People's Republic of the Commonwealth, but that's just me. I really approve actually of the weapon, enemy and armour redesigns. You could definitely see a hybridization between Fallout 3 and Fallout 1 designs in weapons and enemies. The mutated creatures are also much more intimidating and, well, unpleasant, reminding me a lot of the creatures from Metro 2033. Companions here are varied and pretty good. I am a fan of good companion characters in Fallout. I had a lot of favourites in New Vegas, and 2 in particular, and Tycho of course. An interaction with them with the new voiced main character, oh yeah, that's a thing too. Yeah, it's good.
Peddling poison to kids, are we? Today, you face the Silver Shroud!
Who you say?
Makes the character connection a bit better. It's a shame then that companions run out of lines of dialogue pretty quickly and start repeating themselves. I do miss the expansive dialogue trees from New Vegas, where you could explore different aspects of their past and personality. Here you have the triggered opportunities to do that, but any other time it's just, hey, what you thinking? Trade. Are we friends? And alright, piss off. Just to dwell on the topic of companions a little bit longer, awesome, adorable, badass as fuck, hot, kinda annoying, voiced by Goku. Holy fuck, it's a little shit from Fallout 3. Jesus, I've been going for quite a while now. Well, fuck it. If you're a Fallout fan, whatever, you've got this shit already. If you're not, you're interested, but just never played the last generation of games, why not hop into this one? Fallout 4, my #1 game of 2015, and not a single person was even surprised. Happy New Year, everybody!
Calm yourself. The Shroud is here to help.
Please, stop.